Welcome to another edition of Motley Rock Stories. This is Upside Down Jack, and we've got a treat for you on today's podcast. Now, I saw in person the greatest acts of all time in the 70s. Hendrix, Cream, The Who, Pink Floyd, Genesis, Gentle Giant, and I always thought the most high-energy band that I ever saw was Deep Purple. That is until I saw a band you might not have ever even heard of. They were called Flash Cadillac and the Continental Kids. These guys were a musical version of the Marx Brothers. Their show was a zany slapstick three-ring circus. You never knew who to look at because there was always something going on. George Lucas discovered these guys in Hollywood and put them in his first film, American Graffiti, before he got famous with Star Wars. And Francis Ford Coppola put them in Apocalypse Now. A special edition of the TV show Happy Days was even written featuring Flash Cadillac. And they were always on shows like Dick Clark's American Bandstand and shows like The Midnight Special. Flash Cadillac came from Boulder, Colorado, and a couple of their Boulder musician buddies wound up in my band, Whitehorse. In fact, Whitehorse took over their crazy three-story rock and roll Flash Cadillac house when Flash Cadillac moved back to Colorado. And here's some rock and roll history for you. Who took over Flash Cadillac's bedroom but one Mick Mars from Motley Crue today, believe it or not? So today we have my friend Warren Butch Knight, the bass player and original founding member of Flash Cadillac. So here's a quick clip of Flash Cadillac in action from one of their shows in the 70s.
Death dealing.
Where was I?
Good morning to you.
Warren, doggone it, I haven't seen you for 44, 45 years, man.
Has it been that long? I don't have quite the scenic background that you got going there, but
Yeah, that's my wife's deal. You know, she's got this grease screen behind me, so I can put anything I want back there. And I thought, well,
yeah, I can do that too, but I'm lazy.
nah, hey, so gosh, 44 years. What has Flash Cadillac been up to in 44 years? Fill me in.
Good question. That could take a while.
Yeah,
Let's see. So 44 years ago would be
77.
1977. That's kind of when we moved out of our Wilton Place house and you guys moved in, right?
Yeah.
Or some of you. Were you part of the group that moved in?
No, I wasn't part of it. In fact, I'll ask you questions about that because I missed that whole scene. But back to Flash Cadillac, when you guys moved away from Hollywood, you got a ranch in Colorado or something? You kept playing around?
That was always our plan, Jack, was not to spend any more time in Hollywood than we have to.
Yeah.
And so we arrived in the spring of 1970, and we left there in the fall of 76. And the plan was always do what we can and see if we can make this thing work. And we didn't know if it was going to work or not when we moved out there in spring of 70, but got some breaks and got in the movie American Graffiti, and that helped a lot. And
you guys are still playing?
Yeah, band continuously performing, although last year and a half we haven't performed through COVID and all that.
Join the club.
Yeah, I hear you there. So anyway, yeah, we looked like it was going to work, and it started working. So we moved into that house down there on Wilton Place in the spring of 73, right when American Graffiti got released, and right around the same time. And
what an amazing place that was. Now, how did your landlords put up with you guys? I mean, for the people who don't know, that was the original Animal House. I'm telling you, there was party after party. What was it? 25 bedrooms or something and 20 stories tall. I mean,
well, you're exaggerating a little bit there.
A little bit.
No, it was. Tell you what, I'm gonna take out my headphones and see if you can hear me okay, and hopefully we won't get any feedback.
And what I remember about that house was it was wall-to-wall beer cans and hubcaps.
Yeah, well, it was the beer can pyramid, the beer can display. That was an idea that started over in the first house we had when we first moved to LA, Jack. We were in the Valley, Sherman Oaks, and this is when we were only like six. We were a 5-piece band and with one road crew, so we were only 6-piece traveling group. So we were able to fit into this 2-bedroom, nice garden ranch home in Sherman Oaks. That a lady's mother had been living there, and the mother, I think, passed away, and so the lady decided to rent it, and we came to town and we needed a place to rent, and we needed references. Luckily, I have 2 uncles that lived in California, in Los Angeles at the time. My mom's brother worked for Texaco, and my dad's brother worked for Technicolor. So I had excellent references. So we said, well, these guys can vouch for me, and they vouched for the band. And she said, I'll take a chance on you. So we lived for 3 years, and then we just outgrew it because we got a 6-piece of saxophone and a couple more road guys. And so we needed a bigger place. So we went shopping the spring of 73. A couple of our folks were down wandering around looking at rentals off the newspaper and all that. And back then, of course, no internet or anything. We're talking the previous millennium, the dark ages still.
Yeah.
And they found this house. Didn't even look inside it, but it was big enough. It was 3-story and like 4. Let's see, I think there were 4 bedrooms on the 2nd story and a couple on the 1st floor, and about 2 or 3 more upstairs on the 3rd floor. So that was going to absorb all the people that we needed, and that became, like you say, the Animal House. So we had beer cans, and we had our own jukebox, and we had a pool table. The first thing you saw when you walked in the front door was our pool table, and it was just a fun place to live in. And we always thought we'd live together as a band. That's how we'd done it first 3 years. And so nobody bailed on that idea. So there we were, like Animal House, like a frat, like a fraternity, only it was a band fraternity. And Chris Moe, our piano player, the drummer, Rock and Rico, had bedrooms on the 1st floor, and Spike and I and Sam, who was Flash, and Dwight had bedrooms on the second floor, and then the drummer and a couple of our house sitters had rooms up on the third floor.
And all the people that slept in the living room, and us rock and rollers that came in there to get high and hang out all day and all night, just slept wherever we could find.
Yeah, that's true. And that was fine. That was fine back then. So yeah, a lot of fun in that house. And of course, we as a band, we had played basketball intramurally at CU before we ever really became a band. So we slapped up a backboard back there in the backyard on the garage with a little two-car garage driveway to play little hoops but we weren't there all that much. As you know, we were touring quite extensively back then, playing colleges and all over the place. So we'd go out for 3-4 weeks and come home for a week. So, but we sure enjoyed LA, because back when we first moved to LA, back in 1970, pretty much in the music business, or it seemed like us, to make it, you had to either go to New York or LA to make a name for yourself.
Yeah.
And we were all Westerners except for Spike, who was from Pittsburgh, but we sure as heck weren't going to move to New York to try and establish our career.
The drummer that was with you back then,
Harold Fielden. Yeah, Harold Fielden was our first drummer, and he's one of the ones that started the band. And then he quit after a couple of years, and then Rockin' Rico took his place. Yeah, Rockin' Rico, John Messino, a true musician from the San Francisco area originally. And
now Rico, who replaced him?
Rockin' Rico became our drummer when Harold retired in 71. So that was 2 years after he started. And then in 1974, there were some, you know how bands are. Sometimes everybody doesn't get along splendidly with each other.
Yeah,
I mean, their personalities, thank goodness, but they're different personalities. Well, came to a point where Rockin' Rico and Chris, our piano player, one of our originals, weren't, they weren't good buddies, put it that way. And so that came to a head on a show in Vail, Colorado one night when Rockin' Rico had enough with Chris. And Rockin' Rico's passed away now. He's been gone probably 7 or 8 years by now.
Everybody's gone but you and the sax player. Shoot.
Yeah, sure. We've had a lot of people pass away. But anyway, so Rockin' Rico, right in the middle of a song, had enough and walked right through his drum set toward Chris on the piano and attacked him. And they're rolling around and duking it out just like a cartoon, with little stars and things flying off, and stuff. And Spike and I were going, what? So that Rico kind of disqualified himself to stay in the band after that.
Huh.
So, but we were right in the middle of the show. It was like at the end of the first set. So the promoter tried to tell people this is part of the act.
You guys did so many wacky things on stage. Anything could have been part of the act.
Yeah, that's true. We were wacky enough where that maybe some people could have believed. So our road crew guy at the time, a good friend of Sam's, Jeff Stewart, he was our road crew guy, a musician, really a bass player, but he played some drums. So he drank 2 or 3 beers to calm himself down and played the second set with us because he knew the material. You when you're in the road crew, you sit through all the shows, so you know what the songs are. And so he got us through, and then he became our drummer for 2 more years, from 74 to 76.
Crazy.
And then Paul Wheatbread, who had been in the Union Gap with Dwight Bement in the previous years, we needed after Jeff. San Diego. I hope this is going worldwide, right?
Yeah, right.
Well, put it this way.
The Chinese here soon.
Yeah, okay. Well, a couple of years later in 76, there were some problems, so Jeff left the band. And then so Paul Wheatbread became our drummer, and Dwight had drummed with him in the Union Gap. So,
wow.
And then that's right when we moved to Colorado. And Paul, his family was from California. He's a Californian. That's where Union Gap started. It was down in San Diego.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. So that lasted, and we moved out of LA, out of having some moderate success, certainly movie success, and a hit record or 2 on the radio, and moved back to Colorado to do our own thing, quote unquote. And then the income kind of dropped off, and we were doing our own thing, but we weren't financially successful at first, living on that ranch that we bought back in Colorado. So Paul Wheatbread left after a couple of years, and that's when we got Ken Gingrich, and he was a good buddy of Sam's back in the day in high school, and he drummed with us from 78 to 94.
Wow.
He broke the mold there, because we're having drummers only every 2 years.
Yeah.
2 years of Harold, 2 years of John Messino, Rock and Rico, 2 years of Jeff Stewart, and then 2 years of Paul Wheatbread. And then Kenny was our drummer for 16 years. And then Thumper took his place, and Thumper's been our drummer since 1994 to this day. So Thumper has definitely set the record for number of years being Flash Cadillac drummer by far, but at this time.
Now, one of the things I remember from Rico that he inspired me to do was when he took his drum solo, he'd come out front and finish the drum solo on a beer can until it popped and exploded and beer would go all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Following drummers keep that act up, or is that just one of Rico's special things?
No, well, Jeff did that too. Jeff Stewart did that after that was kind of a built-in part of the act.
Yeah.
For a while. It was always it wasn't just any beer can, it was Coors beer. Because we're being from Colorado, we always used the Coors beer unless we couldn't find one. We used to carry them around in the equipment truck. We used to carry beers around so we could pop a Coors beer. Problem with that was, and you being a drummer, you would understand this, when we were doing big shows and we're playing on other people's drums, that not all the time did they take kindly to these greasers getting out there and exploding a beer can with beer flying all over the drums and the cymbals. And
so tell me some of the groups you opened for, and who were the good guys and who were the guys that weren't so friendly?
Well, shoot, I've got a whole list. I can send you at some point all the groups that we've got at least 100.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, more than that. Everything. I'll tell you what. Everything. The whole spectrum. One time we opened. We were a last minute fill in Las Vegas at a lounge show with the Mills Brothers. This is in the early 70s.
Yeah.
You know, and they had a blue hair crowd, and we couldn't turn our amps down low enough. I mean, our amps are on 1/2 on a 10 scale, and it's still too loud. But we did shows on the other end of the spectrum with Wes, Bruce, and Lang at the Hollywood Palladium. We played with ZZ Top a few times, Grand Funk Railroad.
Grand Funk, I remember that.
Yeah. So I think some of the funnest guys, well, some of the goofiest guys, well, here's one, Dr. Hook and the Medicine Show. Dr. Hook, they could have cared less what image they had, and we were all professional at the time and pretty theatric, and we had our show, and it just kind of clicked through, and it was very entertaining. They would spend they'd spend some extra time in the dressing room getting ready for the show, if you know what I mean, and they'd come out, and it was loose, but they were a fun bunch.
Now, how about when you played at some of these real family venues like Disneyland or Knott's Berry Farm, and you guys had these big FCCK all over your amps and the boxes? I'm thinking, and then the C's were crooked a little bit, so that kind
on purpose, yeah. That first C, they rotated that a little bit, so sometime every now and then they'd ask us to cover those up.
Yeah,
but yeah, we did. But that was a good source of employment for us there for a while in California, doing those Knott's Berry Farms and Disneyland. But the band was pretty crude coming out of Boulder in 1970, mostly because of Harold, because that's the way Harold liked to do it. Yeah. So we had to learn to clean it up in order to make some money, which most bands kind of get to that point in their career. I think, Jack, you have to, sometimes you got to clean it up a little bit to be palatable to a wider audience, which we did.
So how did George Lucas, of all people, and Francis Ford Coppola ever find out about you guys? How did you guys get hooked up with them?
That's a great story. That goes back, it goes back to when we first moved, when we first auditioned. We were in Colorado for a year, from spring of 69 to spring of 70. And then by that time we were doing pretty well, but we weren't going to go any really much further if we stayed in Colorado. So that's when Harold, who was kind of tuned into a lot of different things, found an ad in the LA Free Press that bands could audition at the Troubadour on Monday night. They call it Hoot Night, left over from folk music hootenanny. Mm-hmm. So it was the Hoot Night at the Troubadour, and you didn't have to have necessarily any talent or any experience. All you had to do is sign up, and they'd give you 20 minutes. So it was kind of a talent night at the Troubadour, and we signed up and got our slot maybe 6 weeks down the road and drove all night from Colorado. We played a gig on a Saturday night and drove all night and got to LA, and so there's all these groups that on that particular Monday night, we were one of the groups that was going to be performing at the Troubadour. And anybody that's watching this remembers, Troubadour had their showroom, and I can't remember probably what seats, 300 or 400 at the most, maybe not even that much, but a very successful venue over the years. So there's the showroom, and then there's the bar, which was a huge bar outside the showroom. So we set up, and here's a little sidelight. I was always a Birds fan, like hardcore Birds fan, and we're setting up we're on the sidewalk out at the back door of the Troubadour, loading our equipment in, and who walks by on the sidewalk but Chris Hillman. Yeah, and I thought, wow, this is Hollywood. There's Chris Hillman walking down the sidewalk. Yeah, so we loaded in and did a little sound check, and so like I say, you didn't have to have talent. It wasn't all bands. Some of it was comedy. One of the acts that night was Dolenz and Torque. Now this is after the Monkees glory years. This is Mickey Dolenz and his sister and Peter Tork, and they were kind of a little folk thing. I don't remember what kind of music they were playing, but that kind of thing. And there were some comedians and there's bands. So we were nobodies. Nobody knew of us. So we were supposed to play at 10 o'clock, which would have been a great slot, because at 10 o'clock the music room was pretty filled, and the crowd on Monday nights was a lot of industry people, because that's where they'd go. They might discover somebody, or they might see somebody who's worth paying attention to, or at least get a laugh out of somebody that's so terrible that they probably never get a gig again. So the showroom was filled pretty much at 10 o'clock. Well, they kept putting us off and putting us off and putting us off. Finally, we get the last slot at 1:30 in the morning. The last of however many, and by that time, all this parade of less than memorable performers, the crowd had really it was in the bar now, out in the other room, separate room out in the bar. There's maybe 10 or 12 people in the showroom when it was our turn. This is our big break. This is our chance to audition for LA people, and we'd driven all the way from Colorado, but at that point, all you can say is, well, we're getting the raw deal here, it seems like, but we just got to do what we want to do. We let's do what we do, and at least we did it. So our set list, a 20-minute set, probably was something like Rock Around the Clock, Palisades Park, Whole Lot of Shakin', It's Only Make Believe, Johnny Be Good, Tell Laura I Love Her. I mean, you don't have time for a 2-minute song in 20 minutes. So here, Rock Around the Clock was, at that point, it was always our opening tune. So there's 10 or 12 people in the showroom. The bar is packed. Industry people making deals, schmoozing, getting drunk with the people in the business. So, and the people that are in the showroom, probably the 10 or 12 people that were too loaded to move, or too drunk to stand up and get out, or just curious. So we launched in a Rock Around the Clock, and in 20 seconds after we started that, the doors of the bar burst open. Everybody that was in the bar came flooding back into the showroom, because nobody was doing that kind of music in 1970. All the bands were playing Santana and whatever else there was to play, but nobody was playing the rock and roll from 10 or 15 years ago. And so the room filled, and boy, we just knocked him out, Jack, and it was great. I mean, we probably couldn't have done any better if we'd have played at 10 o'clock. And one of the people, here's what I'm getting to. One of the people in the crowd that night was Fred Roos, Roos, Fred Roos, who eventually was hired by George Lucas to be the casting director for American Graffiti. And we made a big impression that night at the Troubadour. I mean, and word got around town that there's this fun bunch of goofballs that played the Troubadour, and we got a manager who turned out to be a crook, but that's okay. But Fred Roos remembered us. And then when it came time for George Lucas to cast, the story that we heard is that in the script, in the screenplay, it was the Herbie and the Heartbeats. That was the name of the band we played in American Graffiti. A band like Flash Cadillac and the Continental Kids. And so we think probably somebody looked at the screenplay and says, a band like Flash Cadillac and the Continental Kids, maybe it was even George. Why don't we just get Flash Cadillac and the Continental Kids to play this part? So that's that was our connection. That very first audition, right out of the blue. 2 years later, we get a call, and we'd like to audition you guys. And so we were third act at the Whiskey right then. That particular week or something, would open an opening act. So we had our equipment set up down at the Whiskey, and on a Wednesday afternoon or something, place is empty, and George Lucas had told us what songs to play and what time to do there. So we went in stage gear. He wanted to see us in stage gear, and so there in the Whiskey, it was empty except for in the booth right in front of the stage. There's George Lucas and Francis Coppola, watching Flash Cadillac and the Continental Kids do their thing, and we played. He wanted to hear "At the Hop" because that was one of the songs that George had in his vision of American Graffiti, and we played 3 or 4 other songs, Jack, and then George and Francis say George says, "Okay, that's great. I'll tell you where to go and when to be there," and that was it. I mean, and so then. And then, of course, the part of Herbie and the Heartbeats was a very toned down version of what Flash Cadillac was at that time, because Flash Cadillac was all personalities and 3-ring circus, and you never know where to look on stage because something was going on over here and something's going on over here. But Lucas had the vision of the red blazers and the thin black ties and Herbie and the Heartbeats, and he kept during the filming, he kept saying, you guys have to tone it down a little bit, because we're used to just getting up there and just giving it all the energy we had, which you saw that many times.
They wanted you to just be your typical garage band, high school doo-wop band.
Yeah, pretty much high school band with the matching uniforms in the dialogue, the gal who introduced us, and they came all the way from Stockton, which is 40 miles from Modesto, which is where the movie is allegedly set. So that's how we got in with Lucas, and he had. They
didn't want the real Flash Cadillac. They wanted the Flash Cadillac 3 weeks after you guys been together.
Well, except music, we would be too crude even then. Yeah, but
really,
and he wanted to sound live. So at that point, the fella, and you probably know this name, Kim Fowley, had produced our first record album, our Flash Cadillac and the Continental Kids. So that they wanted it live. So we went into the studio in San Francisco. It was filmed in Mill Valley at Mount Tamalpais High School. So the day before, we go into the studio in, I can't remember which studio, one of the named studios in San Francisco. In the door, set up the equipment, get the sounds, record the songs, do the overdubs, mix it, mix the master, and out the door in 6 hours for 3 songs. I mean, so anybody that knows studio, that's very live, but that's what Lucas wanted. He didn't want to just to sound polished or anything like that. He wanted it to be authentic, and it was. And so there we go. We did At the Hop, and we did Louie Louie. And one of the things that we got to do, that Lucas allowed us to do, is to do one of our own original songs, "She's So Fine," which Spike and Lynn Phillips and Chris Moe had written that song. So we got to have that do that in the movie and on the soundtrack, and kind of suspected, well, this is probably going to work out all right. We never dreamed that, because the soundtrack was platinum or double platinum even back in the 70s. We made a pretty good chunk of royalty money just from having that original song on the soundtrack, and that was cool.
More money than you made with this one, huh?
Yes, more money than we made with Sons of the Beaches.
Sons of the Beaches. And now you autographed this to me, and I know you probably don't know what you wrote.
No, tell me what I wrote.
You probably.
I can't really see it. Is it? No, I can't read. What? I'll have to read.
But anyway, so there's the guys.
Yeah.
Butch with the now. that was another thing. The other guys in the band, they all had the greased look and they were all slicked back and that, and they that's the way they really were.
Yeah.
You were one of us. You were a long-haired hippie dude, man, with the hair down to your butt.
Yeah.
Put it
Well,
up.
not, yeah, I had longer than shoulder length hair, but we went through a stage where we all wore wigs, but in order to make it look not cheesy, I had to spend some pretty good money back then to get a real good wig or two. Yeah.
Anyway,
and that, but I wore those wigs up through when we moved to Colorado.
well, Angelo wrote "Don't Eat Dirt."
Yeah. Sounds familiar.
Yeah, and you wrote.
I can go ahead. What did I write?
I told you the subject matter. Remember, there used to be the beer called Ham's beer.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Well,
A beer. Did I write a beer is a beer is a beer is a beer until you press the ham?
you got it.
And I can tell you what Flash wrote, what Sam wrote.
No, I didn't get Sam to autograph it.
Oh,
I never. Sam was like Flash Cadillac, man. I just wasn't that close to him. He was like maybe a starstruck or some kind of.
His autograph was always the same. Be cool, Flash Cadillac. Be cool.
Well, that was like. I remember I had some. I got all these props now.
There you go.
I still got the 8x10 glossies.
Yeah.
But you had like a postcard that it said "Be cool" right across there.
Yeah. The postcard was the portrayal of our performance of "Tell Laura I Love Her" with Chris in the front with the crowd, the guitars making a chapel behind, and that one you just showed us. That was.
I loaded some photographs into the computer. Let me see if I can figure out how to do this. I'm going to get the screen and share and see what happens. Can you see that?
Yes, I see that.
That's a picture I took, and I couldn't tell you where, but that's your pyramid.
Yeah.
That's you laying on the ground with the keyboard on your back. You and
no, Spike and I were the bass. Yeah, you can see me. That's me in the front there with my wig and my dark sweater. And then back in the day, that's a Wurlitzer piano that Chris used. In fact, and a lot of times, Jack, we put that on a trash can. We didn't use a keyboard stand. We just put it on a trash can. And then that's Sam. In this picture, you can't see his face, but that's Sam. He would jump up there onto the piano, and then he's playing the guitar behind his back, and Dwight's playing the saxophone between Sam's legs. And
what song would that be?
Probably "Johnny Be Good" is what we use for a closing song.
Huh.
Either that or I think that's probably what it was. "Johnny Be Good."
Yeah, I wish.
And that's Rockin' Rico on the drums, bashing away back there, and that was heavy. That Wurlitzer was not a lightweight instrument. So and then Chris was amazing. He'd carry that thing under his arm. He'd grab it off the trash can and bring it over, and as gently as he could, but it was so heavy, he'd plop it down on Spike and me on our backs when we're down on our knees, and then throw Sam in on top of that. That's a little bit of weight on top of you there when you're still trying to play.
Yeah. Well,
that's cool. I'm glad you have that picture.
Well, I tell you the truth, I have been going through all my memorabilia and all the old Whitehorse pictures and everything of all the bands I've ever been in, looking for this one picture of you that I have. It's stuck in my head. It's a picture when I think you were opening for Elvin Bishop or somebody. We didn't get to come see you guys. Our schedules were the same. A big weekend night or some big night in LA. You're playing, we're playing.
Right.
Every once in a while, you'd have an off night Tuesday gig with somebody, and I'd get to come see you. So as you were coming off the stage, you flipped me the bird, and I got a picture of it, and I can't find that photograph. I've been looking for 3 days for that picture, and I can't find it.
Oh, shoot. I'm sorry, Jack. I'm sorry you can't find that one.
Yeah, but I'll find it. It's stuck in my head. But I found a bunch of them, but I'm trying to figure out how to do this. I put about 6 of them on the computer. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's,
you guys laid on your backs and did another.
Yeah, that's us laying on our backs. That's probably a whole lot of shaking. Because Chris used to play, he started a whole lot of shaking. Then he eventually, we'd bring it way down, and we'd be on our backs like that, doing a kick back and forth. So that's Spike and Sam and myself.
Yeah, that's not a very good picture, but you're still kind of like doing the Johnny Be Good.
Kind of doing it. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. There's the American Bandstand picture.
There you go. Yeah. There you go. There's the trash can used as a keyboard stand.
Yeah.
And then over on the other side, that's our first sax player, George Robinson. And then Dwight took George's place right after the filming of American Graffiti. So when American Graffiti came out, George had screen time, but Dwight was our sax player for 30 years after that.
Crazy. Oops, that's what I traded rock and roll for right there.
There you go.
Yeah.
Good trade.
There's whoops, trying to get to the rest of the pictures. I've been saying this for years. There is so much material from just your band and mine that there could be a weekly Breaking Bad TV series on this rock band's adventures, how they're trying to get through the next day. And between Flash Cadillac and the Continental Kids and Whitehorse, we could have 5 years of shows on the air if anybody ever got to pick our brains over this stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, what kind of a lifestyle? People don't realize what we went through. Some of the crazy things like you're talking about. It's nutty.
Yeah. Well, when we first got together, none of us were married until we left California and got back to Colorado. Spike was the first one to get married after we moved back to that ranch that we bought. Dwight had been married before earlier in his life, but in terms of when we were all living in the animal house, as you could describe it, and traveling around, we're all single. So that worked pretty much to our advantage. Of course, we all had girlfriends and live-ins and all that stuff along the way. There's that one of the American Bandstand episodes, and this is a classic line. Dick Clark, what an entertainer he was. What a good guy. And he just made you feel at home like you're all his buddies on the set when you're doing the show and the interview part. And he always knew whenever he asked Spike something that there was likely to be some kind of irreverent answer coming out of Spike's mouth, because that's who Spike was. That was his character.
Right.
As a off stage, you knew him. He was kind of a regular guy, kind of a soft-spoken guy, and real smart, and fun to be around. But his character, Spike, was definitely a greaser for sure. So on one of the bandstand appearances, Dick Clark asked Spike, what was the highlight of your last tour?
Connie,
Here's the exact quote. Spike says, "I think her name was Connie in Illinois."
Spike, who's your favorite movie star?
Me?
No. What's been the highlight of your career since the last time I saw you?
I think her name was Connie in Illinois.
Not her name was Connie. I think her name was Connie in Illinois. So I mean that.
Well, I can identify with that, man, because there are Motley Crue fans out there that pester me for Motley Crue stuff just because of the Mick Mars connection.
Yes, right. Yeah.
And they know I was, blah blah blah. So I'm always having to give them videos. They had a big convention. In 2017, a 2-month-long Motley Crue convention.
2 months.
2 months.
Wow, that's a lot of crew. Wow.
First of all, Sweden is the Motley Crue capital of the world. The Motley Crue, the Beatles to those people in Sweden. There's people in Sweden like Star Trek fans. They know what William Shatner's high school teacher's name was. Well, these people know more about me than me. They think I'm like the Pete Best of Motley Crue or something. But they have me send videos and do stuff to them. But like Spike, everything when I'm on stage, it's a cartoon character. I don't want me to be that guy. I was a stupid nut on stage, but my normal life, this is me. But they're always wanting me to send them stuff, and I always have to come up with this fake British accent, just be not me, just to try to sell it for my own sake. But let's get back to the house. I want to find out, because Whitehorse took over the house. And for those of you who don't know anything about Whitehorse was another band in LA at the time, and we can tell a story about that later. But we took over the Flash Cadillac house, but that was after I left. And I don't know what happened or how it took place.
well, the landlords weren't really paying too much attention, and
Apparently.
apparently, luckily, uh, the noise that we made apparently wasn't too offensive to the neighbors on either side.
Except when there was an earthquake. I remember there was an earthquake in what, maybe it was 75 or something, and all the beer cans came down.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
It was
Yeah, we had an earthquake in our Sherman Oaks house too, and all the beer cans came down. No, I don't think the landlords were very much hands-on. I mean, the rent check was paid exact on time every month, no problems there, and we weren't. I mean, I don't think we had some parties and stuff, but we weren't terribly. Like I say, I don't think we're all that offensive to the neighbors. Apparently, we weren't, because I don't remember getting any complaints. But
and correct me if I'm wrong here, but back in those days, those beer cans weren't made out of aluminum. I mean, you had to open them with a beer opener, or they had a pop top, and these things were made out of tin, and they were heavy. And I mean, they were, as I recall, now I can't remember what I dreamt or what was drug induced or what is real. So straighten me out here.
Yeah.
In my recollection, every square inch of those walls in the living room had beer cans to the ceiling.
It was a significant feature, definitely, of the first floor there. We had the
ceiling, but didn't they go to the ceiling?
Yeah, they could. Yeah, and we drank a lot of beer as a band, but there was the beer.
Cockroaches used to just love to live in those cans, man.
That could have been. So with there were beer cans. The pool table was the first thing you came to inside the door. Then we had a foosball table in the dining room.
And you had a VCR. I remember the very first time I ever saw an old Betamax or an RCA VCR, and you could put videos in there and watch a movie in your house.
Yeah.
And any kind of movie you wanted. Man.
Yeah, well, there were some very risque movies, and there were some classics. In fact, some of the movies that came out right around then were just classics, and we'd watch them, and then as a band, we'd converse in lines from the movie, like Blazing Saddles. Blazing Saddles was one of our favorites.
Oh, yeah. Of course.
Probably watch Blazing Saddles on VHS once a week. and somebody's got to go back and get a shitload of dimes.
Yeah.
The affairs of state must take precedence over affairs of state. I mean, all those lines, those great lines. And then Young Frankenstein was one of our favorites.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of an off the wall avant-garde one that maybe hasn't made anybody's top 200, but Start the Revolution Without Me was a real fun one. I don't know if you've ever heard of that one. That was Gene Wilder and Donald Sutherland.
Another memory of the house, bike, because I wasn't there a lot, but I was enough to have a lot of vivid memories. And beer cans were one of them. I've seen them all on the ground, almost it seemed like knee deep after the earthquake. And then I remember this guy in a big red Cadillac pulls up, and there's a mattress on the back of it. And this guy gets out and takes the mattress and carries it up into your attic. And the guy driving that Cadillac was David Carradine, the guy from the movie Kung Fu, and the drummer from a once known famous band called Buffalo Springfield. And somebody said, "That's Dewey Martin." Does that ring a bell?
No, I don't know if I was at home that day. I'd have remembered that.
Wow.
And why? So this is Dewey Martin and
David Carradine.
They were delivering a mattress into one of the upper stories of our house.
Yeah. Crazy.
We had some celebrities come through there, but I don't know.
Most of the time I was there, you guys weren't there. I think probably 90% of the time when I was hanging out at your house, you guys were playing somewhere. I hardly ever saw you guys at the house.
Yeah.
It was me and Kim Sherman. Remember?
Kim Sherman, and actually Kim and Dennis Devlin. Those were the two fellas. Kim and Dennis were the ones that watched our house for us when we were out touring.
Yeah. And see, Kim was our guitar player that Mick Mars actually took the place of. And when did you realize that Bob Deal and Whitehorse was now Mick Mars and Motley Crue?
Mm-hmm. Bob Deal, I couldn't remember what Bob's name was, but yeah, Bob Deal. And I remember now. See, this is good. I had forgotten that that Kim played in Whitehorse, and I saw you guys in Aurora, Colorado one night when you were playing like 6 sets. at some bar.
Mr. Lucky's.
Yeah, might have been,
Mr.
but I remember coming just because Kim was in the band and I knew
Yeah.
you guys. Now, was David Day, was he ever in Whitehorse?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Yeah, David Day was in my band before Whitehorse.
Okay.
See, David Day was in joint session.
I didn't remember. Yeah, but I knew that after the Frantics.
Yeah.
In fact, the Frantics were, they were one of the one band that went from Colorado to LA. And then when we first moved to LA before we found our house.
Yeah, but when did you know that Mick Mars was Bob Dio? When did you ever?
Oh gosh, that was a while.
Yeah.
Because I used to come out and see you guys play when I could.
Yeah.
I'd come out and see Whitehorse.
Did you ever see the Upside Down drum show?
Oh yes. Oh
Did
yes.
you?
Oh yes.
Really?
In fact, that's when you texted me a few days ago. I texted back, Mr. Upside Down. I
Wow.
mean, that's a hard image to get out of your brain.
There's only
Really?
2 people in the world that I know, other than the guys in the band, that saw that, and you're one of them. It's just amazing.
Well, you used to do it every night, didn't you? I mean,
No,
wasn't that
that was the thing. It's the guys in the band. First of all, when I asked if they wanted to rehearse this with me, and they said, no, we don't want you to do that. They figured it'd upstage them, and no, it's a bad idea, and you're never going to be able to pull it off. And everyone was dead set against it till I did it the first time. And then after I did it the first time, and then we started to get all this notoriety, and the record company started looking at us and blah, blah, blah. They wanted me to do it every night. And I said, no, I'm only going to do it when I want to do it at this show that I think will get us some, And they were twisting my arm to do it every night, but I only did it 13 times.
Okay, I did not know that. Well, at least a couple times that I saw you must have been special for some reason.
Did it almost fall one of those times? Do you remember it almost falling one of those times?
No. When I saw it, it looked like it was all very, very well thought out and mechanically about as safe as you can be trying to do what you were doing, And I told my wife about it the other day, and she said, "Well, how did you make that work? How do cymbals sound upside down?" I thought, I have no idea how the cymbals sound upside down, but I think he figured it out. So.
I still got the rig in my backyard. In fact, for the Motley Crue convention thing, I got this bright idea because the promoter, he says, "I want you've got music of Mick Mars and Whitehorse." I said, "Yes." And he says, "You got photographs?" I said, "Yes." "Well, can you make me videos of the music with the photographs?" And I thought, okay, but I'm in the video business. That's kind of boring. I still have me. I still got the drum set. I'm going to set up a green screen, put on my headphones, and play air drums along with the music, so that I can cut photographs into it, make it look like one of the guys in Whitehorse playing. So I sent those videos back to them, and they said, "Can you send us more?" And a long story short, I wound up giving them like about an hour and a half of music videos of me playing all those songs with a green screen with photographs cut in of all the other guys around. And it's crazy.
Cool. I don't know when I found out that Bob Dio had become Mick Mars. I was not, be honest with you, I was not a heavy metal aficionado by any means. So
you would have probably seen us with him a couple times with Kim.
Yeah, I think I did.
Yeah.
But I very distinctly remember visiting the house after the band was living there.
Yeah.
And Bob and his wife and he had a young child at the time.
Yep.
I mean, I'm very distinctly, they were in the room that used to be Sam's room in that house. So, and you could, the band, you could tell the band was struggling, but bands struggle. So,
well, once I left, it was, I have no idea what went on. But when they moved into the house and who got which room and get whatever.
Yeah.
Well,
Bob got Sam's room. I know that. So.
Bob got Sam's room. Well, that's
I met the Frantics before Flash Cadillac even started.
I guess Kim passed away a couple years ago.
It's been longer than that. Yeah, Jack, it's been 6 or 8 years at least by now.
Yeah, for unknown viewers here, Kim Sherman was the guitar player who did studio work on this record.
Yeah, he played some studio cuts with his son, Flash Cadillac, Sons of the Beaches.
Printed on the back, and when we had to in Whitehorse, when we had to fire our leader, the guy that was getting paid and basically We just had to get rid of this guy because he was stealing from us. But we couldn't audition anybody who was known from LA to be in our band or he'd get word of it. So we found this guy basically living at a club named Bob Deal. And we started teaching him our music, but we had to go on the road and flee. And we didn't have anybody ready. So a friend of our guitar player, David Day, got Kim Sherman to sit in with Whitehorse until Bob Deal, aka Mick Mars, was ready. And that's how Kim Sherman had the Flash Cadillac, Motley Crue, Whitehorse connection. And
Sure. Yeah, and I saw like I say, saw you guys in, I think it was in Aurora back in the day, playing six sets.
Yeah.
Amazing.
and
Bands
that was the thing. We averaged 28 nights a month, average.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean 28 gigs.
Yeah.
Because there's times we do 2 or 3 gigs in one day.
Yeah. That's pretty wild, Jack.
On 1 or 2 nights we'd get off a month. We go, well, where's Flash Cadillac playing? We'll go see them.
Yeah. So I sent you that picture of the band as it is now.
Yeah.
And right now our new guitar player is Casey Phillips, who's Spike's son.
And you say it's an uncanny resemblance.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's definitely the family resemblance there when we're on stage and people that knew Spike back in the day. Spike's real name is Lynn Phillips.
Yeah.
And his son Casey, who's now 41, and he's in our band now. And of course, he grew up with Flash Cadillac, born into it, and has been around the music all his life, and so he knows what Flash Cadillac's supposed to look and sound like. So it's been fun having Casey in the band. And
getting back to major motion pictures. So you guys were filming Apocalypse Now as well,
right?
I was not aware of that. What did you do in that movie, and
how that started was through the Coppola connection. After American Graffiti, George Lucas went on to Star Wars, and Coppola had just come off the Godfathers, and then Coppola was working on Apocalypse Now after Graffiti. And here's a little tidbit. Our piano player Chris, blonde fellow, he had our leading role in our episode of Happy Days. He was Rocky Rhodes, piano player in the band on Happy Days. Johnny Fish and the Fins, who was in the script. He was a good a summer camp buddy of Richie, of Ron Howard. So
I bring to you now Johnny Fish and the Fish. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to make an announcement. Fish and all the Fins want to make a special dedication of our first song to our good friend Richie Cunningham. Richie let us stay in his house last night, and even though it caused a lot of static with his friends and with his chick, he kept about us and didn't tell anyone we were there. I saw her standing on the corner, a yellow ribbon in her hair. I couldn't keep myself from shouting, look at that.
anyway, Chris had a speaking role and did pretty well. He never had any acting experience really that I know of. But anyway, based on that, George Lucas asked Chris to come to California and audition, or at least do a reading or a screen test or something for the part of Luke Skywalker.
Wow.
Yeah, and right out of the blue. And so Chris went out there and did it. And the stories that we heard, you never know what's true and what's not, but he made a favorable impression on George Lucas, but he was too tall. Apparently, he was too tall for the part, for the character. I mean, they needed somebody that was shorter somehow. That's what I heard. But think about that. I mean, if Chris had been cast as Luke Skywalker, the history of the band would have been different. It would have gone in some different direction. So anyway, Chris was going out there to George's office in San Francisco, and he walks in to get ready for his meeting with George, and there's Francis Coppola sitting in the waiting room. They knew, we knew Francis, and said, "Hey, Flash Cadillac, hi Francis." And they said, Francis asked Chris, "How'd you like to be in another movie?" Because he was getting ready to gear up for Apocalypse Now. And so Chris says, "Yeah, sure." And so we played the part of the USO band on stage in Apocalypse Now. Had to grow our hair down probably about how long yours is right there today. We did research in 1969. Band hair was maybe down to here, so we had to grow our hair out a little bit. And he wanted the song Susie Q. Susie Q was the song for the scene. And so
You're gonna go watch that movie tonight and watch
yeah,
it.
well, and that's one of the best recordings we ever made, Jack, and here's why. Because back in 70s, this is in the spring of 76, getting ready to film over Memorial Day weekend in 1976 in the Philippines. And so
You had to go to the Philippines to film?
yeah, well, twice. We went twice.
What
Yeah.
was
Well,
they
here's
needed
the
the
deal.
backdrop or something?
No, yeah, well, it's a Vietnam War movie, so you got to be authentic. You got to be in Southeast Asia, pretty
Wow.
much.
Even
So
the band on stage, huh?
well, so what happened is they wanted Susie Q, and the scene is about a third of the way into the movie. Martin Sheen is the young Army guy that's leading the PT boat up the river to try and find Marlon Brando, who's the renegade dropout, who's fighting the war on his own terms and is not living up to Army expectations in the movie. One of the young actors that was on the PT boat was Larry Fish, who was Lawrence Fishburne at age 18. And Larry, what a character he was.
Wow.
And he was a fun guy, and we had fun with him. And so we played the song Susie Q, but to get it recorded, we were out traveling around in the spring of 76, and this is after our song Did You Boogie with Your Baby had been a hit in early 76. But we were out on the road, and they needed the song recorded. So they threw us into a studio in Dallas, and you'll appreciate this. Anybody that's done recordings where you've been told what to do and how to do it, and why don't you try this, and I don't like that, try this. Well, here we were all by ourselves out on the road, so we got to produce the song ourselves. Really, we went in the studio, played the song Susie Q, had an engineer there, and we kind of produced it, and it was one of the best records we ever made because it sounded like us.
Yeah.
It sounded exactly like us.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we had a version. We did it, Jack, and we mixed it good enough, rough mix. And so then we call up the Philippines. Of course, back then, just landline. Call up the Philippines on a landline. Hold the phone up in the studio in the control room, and hear the playback through the studio speakers. And the gal says, "Well, I like it, but it's a little too fast. Can you slow it down?" So we go back into the studio and slow it down a little bit.
That would speed it up.
No, for us it didn't.
Would speed it up for us.
Yeah, Paul Wheatbread, he was probably the best drummer we ever had. He just had an excellent metronome.
What is he doing nowadays? He's probably down here in San Diego.
He's in San Diego, and I think he's still playing music, I think. But we went back into the studio, and he just set the tempo on a slower thing, and it was just a magic recording for us.
Huh.
And it sounded great on stage. And we had visions, oh well, we're going to make some money on the soundtrack on this, because on American Graffiti we'd made considerable money, royalty money on the song She's So Fine being on the soundtrack album. So, but this was not that kind of soundtrack, as it turns out. The Apocalypse Now was dark, too dark. And also, right during our song in the screenplay, there's some cursing, which you're not going to be able to get your song on the radio with that stuff. So that was Apocalypse Now. So we went over to film in Memorial Day of 1976, and Coppola had scheduled it so he could get his filming done before the typhoon season, because they have typhoons over there, just like we have hurricanes in Southeast US. Well, he had 3 pre-season typhoons that came through and washed out his sets and flooded all his stuff, and we didn't even get to film. So we're sitting around for 10 days in this resort, by their standards, resort hotel. Can't film. It's raining sideways for 10 days with these typhoons. We're having breakfast with, oh gosh, some of the actors, just we're there. We're all stranded pretty much. And in our scene, there was the three gals that were playing the part of Playboy Playmates, two of which were Playboy Playmates. So just sitting around hanging out. Robert Duvall, I mean, he was kind of a cool guy. We had breakfast with him just because we couldn't go anywhere, couldn't do anything. Yeah. And then finally they evacuated us out of there because there was nothing going to happen. And we all, right before we evacuated, we got amoebic dysentery from some bad ice at the hotel. So we all came flying back to California and, with amoebic dysentery. That wasn't any fun at all.
I just can't understand why they would try to film that in the Philippines when they could fake it here. If it's, if they're looking for a stage scene, because I remember when you guys did Happy Days, and I was trying to educate my kids who were basically all in the music business about how video production works. And then we were watching you guys on stage, and then you saw the reaction of all the Cunninghams in the audience.
Yeah.
I said, that's not real. I said, they're shooting the band on one day and they're all playing on stage, and another day that audience is going to come in there and applaud and act like they're watching the band. And I said, that's the way it's done. So getting back to Apocalypse Now, why couldn't they just saved a lot of money?
Well, I don't know. That maybe Francis didn't think he could make it as believable.
Or is that how they did it on Happy Days? Were you guys going to an empty room when you were?
No, actually, we were on. Your part, right? We were actually on stage, and of course they'll film extra. They'll film us on stage and like the Cunninghams reacting and rocking out in the audience. But the way they do it, they make it look like it's a huge room while it's just in a TV studio. Yeah. And then the part that shows them up in the LL. The one of the last rows that's where their seats were. Yeah. That was just a little grandstand in the studio of about 8 rows. Yeah. But the way they film, you're right. The way they film it makes it entirely believable. Yeah. There's been a documentary that you could find, I'm sure, Jack, of the making of Apocalypse, and I think it was maybe Francis's wife that did that.
Yeah. Wow. Huh.
And I never, we just took it for granted. I mean, Francis is filming in the Philippines and you guys are going to go to the Philippines. Well, then we had to evacuate and go back. And then he finally got to film it in December after typhoon season was over in a different location in the Philippines. But we went to the Philippines twice in 76 to be in Apocalypse.
The money they waste making movies. Unbelievable, man. How about cruise ships? Have you guys ever played on any cruise ships?
Only once, and it wasn't a regular cruise gig where the cruise is out for a week or two and you're playing several times. Yeah. We did one celebrity cruise one time. This fellow who was a real well off computer guy on the East Coast became a friend of ours, and he rented a cruise ship for a weekend just for his employees and his vendors and people like that. Yeah. Sailed from Canaveral down to the Bahamas, docked in the Bahamas on Saturday, and we played a show while we were docked on Saturday night on the ship, and then came back and a day or two later. But no, that's the only time we ever played.
Because I've discovered cruises lately. I mean, I went on the 2017 Yes Cruise to the Edge and the 2019 Yes Cruise to the Edge.
Yeah.
And I've never been exposed to being on a cruise ship with 30 bands for a week. And for a musician, that's just like being in heaven, man. And how about David Day? I haven't heard from him in 20 years. We used to be good friends. And then I think with me writing my memoirs about Whitehorse, and I didn't paint the band in that good a light, and I don't think he's ever forgiven me for it ever since. But when's the last time you talked to him, and what's he?
Oh yeah, that's a good question, Jack. See, when Kim passed away, it was kind of, I was trying to reach the other guys in Frantics just to let them know. When Jim of the Frantics, he passed away later on after.
Jim Haas.
Yeah, Jim Haas. Yep.
Really? When did he die? That's news to me.
Yep, Jim Haas passed away maybe 4 years ago now.
Really?
but I was trying to reach David.
Wasn't he Andy Williams' ghost voice?
Yes, he did. He did vocals for Andy Williams. He did. That's right, Jack. He passed away. I bet 4 years ago. But anyway, I was trying to reach David and didn't have any luck. I did reach Max Byfuglien, though, who had been the leader and the lead singer of Frantics.
No, yeah, who's the lead singer? What am I thinking? The drummer was Gordo. That's right.
Gordo. Oh yeah, Gordo originally from Pueblo, Colorado, which is just down the road from where I live here in Canyon City. That's where Gordo started out, and I still get some Facebook stuff from Gordo, but Max, I wanted him to know about Kim, and found out that Max, after his music career, he became an executive in the Cheesecake Factory.
Can you see that?
Yes, I can.
There's Kim.
There's Kim. There's David. Bass player's the guy on the right, right?
Yeah, that's Harry Clay.
Harry Clay.
Kenny Morris in the middle.
There's Kim. I'm not used to seeing him without his glasses. That's a good picture of him, though. Back in the day, you played guitar loud, so he played his guitar loud with his Marshalls and stuff. The joke was at this place was called Kelker Junction. The dance floor would be filled, but there would be a line of emptiness, like where nobody would stand, and that was the line that came straight out from Kim's amplifier. It was too loud for any human to stand there. So that used to be the joke that the band was great, but just don't stand right in front of Kim's amp. Or that's different. Yeah, you got the flaming trousers there.
Yeah, flaming. I still got those. I still have all these clothes, and the Motley Crue fans, man, I'm gonna have an auction because I can sell that stuff for big money. So Bob Deal, Mick Mars, Harry Clay, and me lived in this apartment in Huntington Beach when I broke my leg playing baseball, quit the band. Mick and I moved to San Diego, lived with my mom. I got him a job at a guitar store selling guitars that lasted one day, and he bailed on that, went back to LA and got back in with Whitehorse, and then those guys moved into your house because Harry couldn't afford the apartment by himself, and that was just about the same time as you guys moved to Colorado. And I'm not sure, but I think David Day got Gordo to come out from Colorado and take my place, but that didn't last real long. All right.
That's great. Yeah, Kim, what a good friend he was, and he and Dennis watched over our house when we'd go out and be traveling around. And yeah, speaking of who got fired and why, I think I can share this. I hope I won't get anybody in trouble. But in the Animal House at the Wilton Place house up on the third floor, after Jeff Stewart had been our drummer for a couple of years, Spike's girlfriend actually, she went upstairs and she and Jeff Stewart had a thing up there, and so that was a very soap opera type moment.
Oh,
or
believe that.
drummer having an affair with the guitar player's girlfriend.
That kind of stuff never happens in Hollywood. Come on.
Well, it did for us. And then there's somebody's got to leave the band. Is it going to be Spike, who's one of the original founders, or going to be Jeff, the drummer? Of course. So Jeff left, and the best part of the story though is that he and the lady Murky, they moved to Montana together and got married and had a wonderful life. And he eventually passed away from a heart attack too. But
really,
yeah,
Jeez.
In his 40s.
So tell me about this is going to be a tricky question, but what was the worst gig you ever did, and what was the toughest time you ever had on the road?
Okay, here's a story of, I don't know if this wasn't, the gig itself wasn't so bad, but getting the band to the gig was an epic maneuver.
Oh, heck yeah.
In October of 1989, there was the World Series earthquake, October 17th, 1989, in San Francisco area. Flash Cadillac had a corporate convention gig coming up, and I'd gone out earlier because a real close friend of ours lived in Redwood Estates, which is up in the Santa Cruz Mountains, south of Los Gatos, before you get over to the hill to Santa Cruz. So myself and one of our road crew guys had gone out to visit my friend Larry. This was 2 days. Sort of been the day we got there, the day before the gig, so we had time to spend with Larry. And then the band was flying in that night into Oakland, and then we were going to do the gig the next day. You know, typical, do the sound check in the afternoon and do the corporate gig. Well, so at 6 o'clock in the evening before, this is the day before the gig, we're at Larry's house. He's a giant San Francisco Giants fan, a baseball fan. We're sitting down getting ready to watch the World Series game, and the earthquake hits. And actually I had this may be TMI, but I don't think so. I got off the couch because I wanted to get cleaned up. I hadn't showered yet. So I was just getting ready to get into the shower when the earthquake hit. And I wasn't, we're 6 miles. His house was 6 miles from the epicenter.
Wow.
So violent.
Yeah.
And it started with a bang. It just bang.
Bang.
It started like that. And I'd been in a couple of earthquakes already, so I knew what this was.
Yeah.
And I just was holding on for dear life to the door frame in the bathroom. And those guys were still in the living room, and the house was pitching and shaking and everything. And Larry tried to get out of his front door, and he made it to the front door, and then the house pitched him, just launched him out, in a little orbit, and landed on concrete and shattered his knee. So I finally got some clothes on and went out there, and so I ended up driving him in my rental car to the Los Gatos Hospital, and what a scene. So that was the evening of the earthquake.
Threw me out of bed. I was in a waterbed during the Silmar quake, not far from the Tilton Wilton. And
I remember the Silmar quake.
I was laying in the bed, and when the earthquake hit, I was standing on my feet.
Yeah.
Just threw me out of bed. What the hell was that?
So the earthquake hits, the Bay Bridge has collapsed, the Oakland airport's closed, and the guys had scheduled to fly in a late night arrival into the Oakland airport. Well, they're still in Colorado. So next morning after I took Larry to the hospital, I went to the hotel, and then the next morning, Sam is in Colorado Springs, and I'm in San Jose, and this is where the gig was supposed to be, in San Jose. We're trying to put together a way to get the band out for that night's gig, and the buyer was willing to pay for a private plane, the client. So we're trying to put that together over the phone, and supposed to get a jet, like a Learjet or something. Well, what it ended up being was a prop plane. It showed up in Colorado Springs, and everybody got on this plane, and they took off to the west, flying against the jet stream. Took them 6 hours to fly from Colorado Springs to San Jose, and Jody Stewart, which was one of our guitar players in road crew, he had to sit on the restroom seat, because
the whole way there.
Yeah, the whole way there.
Yeah.
And so they finally get there at 6 o'clock, and we do a real quick sound check, and did the gig, and then the next day they flew the private plane back to Colorado Springs. So that the gig itself was not real memorable. It's a typical corporate gig. You play your stuff, and some people are paying attention, some aren't, but you're just kind of there as a sideshow. You've done some of those. So anyway, but that was probably the most challenging transportation hoops we ever had to jump through to fly the band in on the day after the earthquake and do a gig and then fly back the next day.
Yeah, well, at least you guys can get away with doing stuff like that. I mean, people don't understand, when you're at the next level below that, like where Whitehorse was at, when our truck breaks down on the road, we have to take whatever can fit in my van out of the truck and try to get to the gig with all 5 of us in the van and the equipment and make this work, because the equipment trucks broke down and there's nothing we can do about it. So we throw everything in the van, and literally Mick Mars, because he's the smallest guy, Bob Deal, he's laying on top of one of the amplifiers with no more than 12 inches between him and the roof. And he's just, and he's claustrophobic, and we're going to drive for an hour like that.
Isn't that something? Yeah.
Just paying your dues.
Yeah. The transportation breaks down.
And then we find out that after we drive all the way to Riverside to do the gig, that Harry left a pot in the glove compartment of the truck, and the truck doesn't have cab doors that lock. So if the police come in there and go, what the heck's this truck dripping oil in the parking lot doing? They look in the glove box and they find.
By the way, what's this stuff in the glove box? Oh,
Harry's going to jail. So now we got to drive all the way back to get the pot. Mick Mars still stuck in the roof, then go all the way back to Riverside and back down to San Diego. So
that's interesting. We had a similar story about leaving pot behind. Rock and Rico, whom we mentioned already.
Yeah.
We did a gig in Clear Lake, Iowa,
yeah,
at the Surf Ballroom, famous venue, the Surf Ballroom, where the music died. Went the last gig that Buddy Holly, Big Bopper, and Richie Valens did in 1959. Wonderful ballroom. We played there in the 70s with Rock and Rico, and he had scored some pot somehow. I don't know where he got it from, out on the road. So we left. We did the gig and driving the next day up to Minnesota, and we're about 2 hours out, on the road, and Rock and Rico says, "Oh shit, I left the grocery sack of pot in my room. We got to go back." We said, "There ain't no way in hell we're going back to get your sack of pot. There's cops gonna be waiting to snag us, So
well, that reminds me. So because Harry was the problem leaving the pot in the glove box, we made him lay on top of the amps on the road back down to San Diego.
There you go. Punishment. Just punishment.
And he was a big boy. Didn't Spike die at the gig?
Yeah, well, that's I guess. Yeah, no, he didn't die, but that's a good point. Yeah, the March 20th of 1993, we had just started our symphony program, Symphony Pops career. The previous spring in 1992 in Colorado Springs, somebody came up with the idea, let's do a traditional rock and roll pops program, and it worked very well. And Colorado Springs is our hometown. Did it with the Colorado Springs Symphony. They had a fairly new, young, progressive, open-minded conductor, and we made just a cool pops show out of it, of which our CD, A Night at the Symphony, came from that idea. So we did that once in Colorado Springs, and then we did it once more in the fall of '92 in Colorado, in a smaller town called Greeley, and that went all right. The Colorado Springs symphonies, symphonies have different levels of talent, just like bands do. I mean, some of the high-paid symphonies are A's and A pluses, and the Colorado Springs Symphony was probably a solid B minus, which was good. The Greeley Symphony was probably a C minus. But what we found out is that even though the level of musicianship can vary from one orchestra to another, that level of musicianship is what that audience is used to hearing. The Greeley Symphony, their patrons are used to hearing that quality of musicianship. So fine, it worked. The arrangements worked. So then the next spring of '93, we booked our first out-of-state symphony job, and that was the Tulsa Symphony in March of '93. And we were thinking, well, let's see if this works somewhere else where we're not already heroes. I mean, we're kind of well known and well accepted and have good name recognition in Colorado. Let's go somewhere where nobody really knows that much about us and see if it's going to work. And so that we did the March 20th. It was a Saturday night in Tulsa with the Tulsa Symphony, which is solid A symphony. Very good players, and the all the arrangements were just working great. And right at the end, sorry, I'm getting choked up a little bit thinking about it. Shout was our encore song with the symphony. And so we did the two shows. We always do two halves with the symphony, and it went great. People were loving it. Standing ovation, come down and dance in the front. And then we do it in Shout. And right at the end of Shout, Lynn started having his heart attack. And he made it through the end of Shout just barely, but then he was off on the side in a little side room off to the dressing room, and he was out for a while. I mean, they lost him for a while, but there were physicians in the crowd were on him immediately, and they shocked him back to life. But he had just too much damage, and they did surgery the next morning on Sunday, and he didn't survive that. So that was, yeah. Maybe I blocked that out as being a worse gig, but the gig itself was great. And right, toward the end of it, we were looking at each other saying, this is going to work. We can go anywhere in the US to do this. idea. It had been something we'd been working on for months, and then Spike had his episode, and
then how much,
the gig was great. Yeah.
how much longer after that was Sam's?
Well, this was '93, and of course there was no replacing Spike. He was one of those guys, irreplaceable was a good description for Spike in our band. So we went from 6-piece to 5-piece. We could still musically kind of cover for him, and still do the symphony stuff, because the symphony stuff, most of it was based on our rhythm section and our vocals, and a few musical highlights here and there, but mostly the arrangers left it up to the symphony, which is how we wanted it. So that was in '93, and then, as it turns out, even then, Chris Moe, our piano player, had been diagnosed with ALS, but right after Spike died wasn't a good time to tell us, obviously.
Yeah.
So, but Chris had ALS, and then just started to deteriorate physically as ALS, and he actually lasted a lot longer than most do. But by the spring of '96, he couldn't tour anymore. So he had to excuse himself from touring. So we auditioned a couple of people and didn't feel right. So we went from 5-piece down to 4-piece. So now it's just Sam on guitar and vocals, myself, and Thumper on the drums, and Dwight on the sax. So, but we could still do the symphony stuff 4-piece, as it turned out. And then, so we were doing some of that and other gigs. And then it was 2001, August 31st, 10 days before 9/11, as it turns out. Sam died of a heart attack at age 49. So this was 8 years after Spike passed away. And of course, August 31st of 2001, my world was upside down, losing Sam after Sam been in a band 30 years. And then 10 days later, 911 turned everybody else's world upside down.
Wow.
So that was, and then Chris actually, he lasted till 2005. So he had his ALS for 12 years before he succumbed.
Crazy.
And then then we had some symphony shows still booked for the fall of 2002 after Sam passed away, because symphonies will book a whole year ahead. So they book their whole program so they can raise their support and sell their tickets. So we had 3 symphony shows already scheduled in the spring of 2002. And so Sam passed away in August, and I thought about it for a couple months or 3 and thought, well, I think I want to keep doing it. I didn't know if I wanted to keep doing it or not, Jack, but we had these gigs. And so we got some Rocky, a guitar player here in my hometown, Canyon City, and I got Tim Irvin. And then we got also Pete Santelli, who's Rocky's cousin, to play keyboards. So we went out the next spring to do those symphony shows. Yeah. And then they went well. They went well enough, still kept going. And that was 20 years ago.
At the thought of you guys still doing this, I got to tell you, because, I was raised on Paul Revere and the Raiders. That
there
was
you
the
go.
First rock band that I liked as a little kid, and I got the heck out of them. And then they had their TV show.
Yeah.
Saw them in concert, and then they're playing there, and they're doing the same stuff you're doing. I mean, they're out there, and music's comedy. Watch us play. We're all having fun playing it. The best thing about Flash Cadillac was, man, you cannot watch that band and not smile your butt off, because you guys are just having fun. You're having so much fun on stage. You have the audience have fun. And that's the same thing with Paul Revere. And then I realized they've been playing this whole time. Paul Revere and the Raiders never stopped playing, just like you guys.
Yeah.
And Paul Revere eventually just passed away, and the band is still keeping it up. They're doing these corporate gigs, and they're still out there. You guys are still out there. There's something to be said for happy music, man. There's just always a place for it.
I like the way you said that, Jack, and always the descriptive line that we've always used since very early in the band's career is traditional rock and roll for the fun of it.
Yeah.
And you're right. When we first started, going way back to 1969, we were having fun, and we weren't good on the musician scale. Maybe they're, world class is 10, and some of the best guys in town in Boulder maybe were 6s or 7s. We were 2s and 3s. Yeah. Maybe Mick was probably our best musician. He might have been a 4. Yeah. And so here we are, greasing our hair back and playing these old oldies that were 5, 10, 15 years old at the time. And the level 6 and 7 musicians in town, couldn't take us seriously.
Yeah.
Because, these guys, because we weren't good musicians, but we found out for very first public gig we did for a frat, we knew how to have fun, and we knew how to get the audience to have fun with us.
Yeah, well,
And-
you
and so-
inspired me so much. I can't tell you, because you gotta imagine, your friends were my friends. David Day, Kim
Yeah.
Schmidt, all these people were my friends. So we hung out with you guys. We saw your
Yeah.
gig, and I was seeing that you guys were already in a movie and you had a record out. You guys are real successful and having fun and doing something on stage that the audience will remember was the thing I wanted to do.
Mhm.
That's where the Upside Down Drum Act came into play, because again, they didn't want to do it. They didn't think the idea was any good. They had no interest in it at all. But I said, look, when you talk to somebody about what band are you going to go see, it isn't what band are you going to go hear, it's what band are you going to go see. Well, why do you go see them? Because they're not just a jukebox. They put on a show. So when we did the Upside Down Drum Act, it was because I was thinking, here's Rocco playing on his beer can out front and spraying it all over the
Yeah.
audience. I'm thinking,
Yeah.
you just got to do something that's different.
Yeah, something that's different, and then but be able to have fun with it, and like you say, we played with many an act over the years, very established, well-known record-selling acts, and musically they were so far above us, but we could kind of keep up with them a little bit on a lower level, just because we knew how to entertain people, and we didn't take ourselves too seriously. That started off even early. We knew we weren't all that great, but we could tell. The very first gig we ever did was in a frat house in Boulder, and it was $1 to get in, and they'd have kegs of beer on the back porch. Eventually the liquor commission had to clamp down on these little frat entrepreneurs, because they were making some pretty significant money without paying any tax to the city of Boulder. But so it was Friday afternoon, and the very first job that we did was this is in March of 1969, March 7th. It was being billed as the 10-year anniversary of 1959, when Buddy Holly, Big Bopper, and Richie Valens. Well, that was February 3rd, but I don't think the frat boys cared it was February 3rd or March 7th. It was just, that was the theme of their party. They needed a theme. And so we had some notoriety even before then, because Harold, our drummer, knew everybody in town and knew he was making this band. So we had about 600 people come through that frat house that Friday afternoon. And of course, back then, 2 kegs of beer was probably $30. And they were supposed to play Flash Cadillac and the Continental Kids, $80, and all the beer we could drink. Well, here's the deal. That frat house was so jam-packed the whole time, it took you 15 or 20 minutes to force your way through bodies and bodies and bodies to get from the stage, which was in the living room, back to the back porch where the beer was. So we didn't get our share of beer. So Harold complained afterwards. Of course, these guys made $500 on the deal easily. And Harold complained and says, hey, we're supposed to get all the beer. We couldn't make it through the crowd. So they gave us an extra $20. So there were only 4 of us then. There's only Spike and myself and Harold and Mick. So we each got $25. But remember that, they had the rug rolled back in the living room, and we played we used to do Peggy Sue, which was appropriate for a gig that was commemorating Buddy Holly 10 years later. And a snowstorm and all the people coming and going, and just there was mud and gunk, and the dance floor, which is the living room floor, was just mud and just yuck. And so we crank into Peggy Sue, and in about 20 seconds, there's about 6 or 7 of the frat boys down on the living room floor doing the full alligator in this mud and this gunk and this yuck. And of course they were well served, probably overserved, but nonetheless, we looked at each other and said, hey, we're having fun, and looks like this kind of music makes these people have fun too. Yeah. Go figure. And that's how it started.
So do you guys have a website that if people would want to know how to get in touch with you or anything?
Yeah, we have it, and it's been down for a while through COVID, but it's going to get back up. It's just flashcadillac.com.
Yeah.
And it may not be quite up yet, but Casey, that we've mentioned, Spike's son, he's getting that back up for us.
Yeah.
And so there will be and we have a Flash Cadillac Facebook page as well.
Okay. Well, is there anything else you can think of? Any story you want to tell, or anything? Is this? I mean, I don't want to keep me much longer.
Yeah, no, we've had a good chat.
Right.
Hoping, any of the fans that are seeing this, listening to this, you can go to flashcadillac.com, and hopefully there'll be some news of when we get to play again. I know the band wants to play, and I can't think of anything else. I've been happy with here in Canyon City. Been here for 20 years. I'm the worship leader at my church. I play acoustic guitar and sing songs for Jesus every Sunday and rehearse every Thursday, and it keeps my voice in shape.
Oh.
Yeah. So praise the Lord.
All right.
What a long, strange trip it's been, like
I guess.
somebody once said.